Please be seated.
The sun will rise, bringing life to the earth as it springs from the ground. The sun will rise, won't you dry all your tears, lay your burden down. Won't you dry all your tears, lay your burden down. Lay your burden down.
In the waiting, God is present. In the waiting, God is present. It's the promise of Advent that we begin today as our life together as the church. In Advent, we practice this holy ritual of waiting. Who here is good at waiting? If we're honest with ourselves, I'm sure I'm not very good at waiting. I think many of you might agree with me. But as we wait, God promises us that the sun will rise, that the days will go on, the earth will spin, and that Christ is coming. And we know waiting is hard. Waiting can be tough. Our sense of patience grows thinner and thinner the longer we wait, it seems. Many of you may know this. Others of you might be visiting here this morning for the first time. But Sarah and I got back 2 weeks ago from our trip to Thailand to go pick up our adopted daughter, Sybil. And this 18-month-old spitfire of a girl who we already can see her personality coming into shape and shining through our interactions with her. Here is Sybil up with us, Sarah and I, at the Thai Adoption Board after they gave us the official yes that we can proceed with adopting her. And here she is with her big sister after we got home. Both of them are unique individual little humans, both making each other laugh and figuring each other out, learning how to share their toys and their parents. And sometimes it's easier than others. I can see one of them in the way back, the older one, so we won't talk about her too much. The trip was months and years in the making, years in waiting. Years of paperwork, of learning who this girl was and is, and then saying yes, and then having to wait some more. Waiting on an immigration process that was not easy or fast. Waiting on a foreign government to give us the okays that we needed to bring her home. Waiting on a 30-hour trip home, which seemed even longer if possible. But not all the waiting was bad. We knew what was to come, most of it. Rarely were we surprised about what we found ourselves in the midst of. We knew why we waited and who it was we were waiting for. And that made it worth it, right? Some of you asked when you might get to meet this little girl. And as you might guess with the theme of this morning, guess what? You get to wait. We are easing her into her new life. Just think, we've only known her for a month, her parents. And we are slowly working into her, into meeting new people where all of a sudden when she shows up here, 1,000 people know who she is immediately. We appreciate your support and excitement. We celebrate with you. We have gotten so many outpourings of support and love, and so thank you. And we also appreciate your waiting of when it is the right time to bring her around. What are some of the things that you are waiting for in your life? What are some of the things you're waiting for in your life? Are they happy things? Are they hard things? Somewhere in between? Are you waiting for Christmas morning? Are you waiting for 2016 to just be over? Are you waiting for medical results? Are you at the bedside of a loved one who is sick? Are you waiting for a job? Are you waiting to reconcile with a family member that you have had a fight with? What are you waiting for? As I've said, Advent is about waiting. And while, yes, we wait for the coming of Jesus in that form of that small child who we celebrated 2,000 years ago, we also look forward to the future when Jesus says, I will come again. We wait for the coming of Jesus to come again. Jesus already came, we know that. And this first time when he came was this relationship-changing event between us and God. It was when God ushered in a new age, a new relationship with us. And after living and dying and rising, teaching us about God in unimaginable ways, Jesus, when he leaves, says, I will come again, don't worry. While Sarah and I waited 2.5 years for our new daughter, the church has been waiting 2,000 years for Christ to come. Talk about waiting. Jesus instructs us to be on alert for him at the end of the Gospel of Matthew. And in these words, he challenges us to be alert and aware for Christ to come, to break into our midst. 2,000 years later, and we're to be alert for the Christ to come as the church. So what does it look like for us as a church? We've been waiting 2,000 years. You know, if you think waiting is hard, do we do it well 2,000 years later? What does it look like to wait for Jesus to come into our midst? What are the things that we do to witness to this in the meantime as we wait? Well, I think the surest example we can look at is looking at what Jesus does and says in the Gospel of Matthew. What does he say in the Gospel of Matthew? Well, just a little bit after this passage, he tells his disciples, whatever you do to the least of us, you do to me. Whatever you do to the least, the lowly, the lost, the last, you do to me. So love them, care for them, be merciful to them. He gives us the Beatitudes in chapter 5 where it says, blessed are the poor and the merciful, the peacemakers, those who are mourning. And so as we see Jesus reach out to these people, we also know he calls us to do the same. And in that way, we prepare for Jesus to come into our lives. From Matthew's perspective, if people didn't know when the second coming would occur, he said, you know what? Just be ready all the time. But we know that can be hard. And so Matthew gives us these touching points to do, to be the people that Jesus needs us to be, to see how Jesus works in our life and comes into our life and offers hope into our life. Because if we get into this game of trying to predict when Jesus is going to come, like some of our Christian friends do, I think we run into problems. Look at that. There's the save the date from August 7th, 2014. One of the recent editions of trying to predict when the end of the world was coming and Jesus was coming. Some Christians, we get into this game, but I think we miss the point of what Jesus is saying to us. Except for, because in Matthew, he doesn't make it clear who's the one that gets taken and who gets left behind. He kind of just leaves it open-ended. So it could be me who's left behind. As much as I think highly of myself, it could be me who's left behind. Right? What if we're not the ones taken, Matthew says? What if we who are so certain we are on God's side are the ones who get passed over, who get it wrong? The second side says, well, that was awkward. It didn't happen. I guess we got to just keep going on. Because sometimes it is awkward, because God has this habit of proving ourselves wrong, of challenging our self-righteousness and reminding us that being ready for Jesus to come is more about how we treat each other than how we think of ourselves. The message from Matthew today as we begin Advent is to always be ready, to always live as Jesus describes and charges his disciples to live. Not to just be self-righteous about our own salvation, but to be self-sacrificing towards others, especially those who desperately need a helping hand, a smiling face, and support in a difficult time. So often in this time of year between Thanksgiving and Christmas, the not church holiday, but the church or the season of busy that we find ourselves in, we can forget that, I think. Or maybe we find ourselves missing those we love, and so the sadness comes into our life, and we just want to get through it as best as we can. And in both ways, God is present in the wait, it says. God is present in whatever it is we wait for. And so we receive this invitation to start Advent, to slow down, to wait, to remember that whatever it is we are waiting for, Jesus is present there. As we wait, Jesus waits with us and reminds us no matter what it is we wait for, Jesus is coming to lift our burdens, to set us free from sin and guilt, to heal our sickness and bring hope to the hopeless, to relieve the stress of preparations and the feeling that maybe I don't have enough. How do I get over this? I love lighting the candles during the season of Advent as this visual timekeeping represents for us what it is or how we are waiting. And as the light builds up until that day when we say, yes, Jesus, you have come, it helps me slow my mind down, which so often wants to race to the finish line rather than wait. So I invite you, racers, to maybe lean and slow down into Advent with me, into the witnessing of the goodness and love and mercy that Jesus has given to us already, and where we need to see that it comes into our life again. Sometimes the waiting can be difficult and hard and unbearable, but together as Christ's church, we can see that Christ is coming, and Christ is present with us as we wait. Amen.